So I think we can start. So I'll do the quick intro, and then we can go right through the AMA. Got it? Okay, great.
Sounds great.
안녕하십니까. 오늘은 블록미디어가 진행하는 무브먼트 AMA에 오신 것을 환영합니다. 저는 블록미디어의 정윤재이고요. 오늘의 AMA는 디파이 농부 조 선생님과 함께할 예정입니다. 안녕하십니까?
네, 안녕하세요.
네, 그리고 본격적으로 오늘의 메인 게스트로는 무브먼트랩스의 공동창업자인 쿠퍼 스캔런님을 모셨습니다. 이번 AMA에서는 무브먼트 메인넷 관련된 여러 소식, 그리고 최근 성과, 그리고 무브먼트의 향후 계획까지 알아보도록 하겠습니다. So hello, Cooper. How are you doing?
Gmove and 안녕하세요. I'm doing great. I just got to Asia. We're kicking off my Asia tour. I'm visiting 12 different cities in about 3 or 4 weeks. So super excited to be meeting so many folks here.
So great. Thank you for joining us. So to start for the AMA, could you briefly introduce yourself and tell us a bit about Movement Labs and how it began and what your core mission is?
For sure. So I'm the co-founder of Movement Labs. In high school and college, I was working all sorts of different jobs, just trying to get by and trying to figure out where the big opportunity for the future was. And eventually I came across Web3 and I fell in love with it because it's a very novel technology. It's such a new industry that a college kid like me can become a subject matter expert and be able to go very far. So I started working with VCs and fund of funds. I was scoping blockchain integrations for their products. I would teach them about tokenization and blockchain, and they would teach me about their business model. Eventually, I realized that following a traditional career path, I would never be in the same room as the managing partners of a fund. It would take me decades to be able to get their time. But I was able to get their time after just a year or so of learning about blockchain because I was able to become a subject matter expert. So I decided to go all in on blockchain. I started building structured products, so finance products with the Move language. It's a very new language built by Facebook. It's very similar to Rust. It's faster and safer than Solidity and easier to build with. And I believe that Move is the future. I believe it is the next big thing that is worth spending great focus on. And in building with Move, what my co-founder and I experienced was that as such a new language, it is very difficult to get started. It's called a cold start problem. How do you get your first users and your first developers? And how do you get people to use this new thing instead of the old thing that everyone is comfortable with? And our applications, we really experience that in a negative way. It's like if you're building an app on a phone, if no one's using the phone, no one's using your app. And so what we believed is that we could create a more effective go-to-market for the Move language and do so in a way that onboards and engages our community. Whether you're a developer or someone participating in the Discord, someone making memes, there's a home for everyone at Movement. And this is something where it's not only something you can believe in, but something that you can be a part of. So the decentralization of the network and making sure that everyone who's involved with us is having a piece of the pie and that we can grow that pie together is our mission statement.
Okay, thanks for introducing about Movement and yourself. So the main reason we are hosting this AMA is to primarily discuss the mainnet launch of Movement. So could you give us a timeline after your launch and share why this mainnet release is such a pivotal recording milestone for Movement?
Yeah, this is the very first time that Move language has been on top of Ethereum, and the first time that any language as next generation as Move has been on Ethereum. What we believe is that instead of creating a brand new chain to start with, I believe that a more effective go-to-market would be to build directly on top of Ethereum and support the users and community that already exists there, because there's such a massive community, user base, liquidity base that it's a very strong value proposition to our applications to be able to onboard those users, that liquidity, and for us to do so in a way that's not necessarily competitive. It's actually very collaborative with Ethereum. And so, yeah, for the first time, Move applications are able to deploy onto Ethereum, and folks are able to benefit from the smart contract performance and security of the Move language without having to leave the Ethereum ecosystem.
네, 혹시 여태까지 질문 혹시 있으실까요?
네. 제가 이제 궁금한 것 중에 하나는 이제 메인넷을 런칭한 후에 이제 사람들이 더 많이 메인넷을 사용하고 그다음에 거래를 할 것으로 사람들은 많이 예상을 했었는데 최근에 이제 듄 애널리틱스를 이제 좀 이렇게 살펴보는 이제 사람들의 의견으로는 생각보다 많은 사람이 사용하고 있지 않다라고 하는 또 다른 어떤 비판이 좀 있는 것 같더라고요. 거기에 대해서 어떻게 또 생각하는지 궁금하기도 합니다.
So after the movement's mainnet, there were a lot of people expecting that there will be more trading volumes and TVL on movement. But if you see on the Dune analytics or those kind of things, I think there are lesser people using on the movement mainnet. So how can you find and how are you going to solve these problems after your mainnet launch and after your plans maybe? Yeah.
So pretty shortly, we'll be bridging over all of the cornucopia TVL. So we had over $250 million pre-deposited for the network. So as soon as all of that hits in the apps, we're going to be seeing amazing TVL. And then as for trading volume and users, we're planning to kick incentives off shortly. So actually right now, like there's not direct move incentives. And so if you're any reasonable farmer, you're not going to go to a chain that doesn't have incentives live. And so I believe that once those incentives kick off, that we'll be seeing a lot of folks coming over and significantly more volume. Essentially, we believe that we want to make sure all of our applications can get deployed and that our core users can be early in terms of farming those applications. And so then once we're ready to bridge over all of the TVL and really turn on the fireworks, that's when the show will begin.
Okay, so after your TGE, you have launched your token before mainnet. So how's the token distribution gone so far? And what major milestones have you achieved since the TGE, particularly in the preparation for the mainnet maybe?
Yeah, so I'm really proud of how we were able to distribute the token. We had a number of community members receive six-figure airdrops. I think that one of the top folks in Korea as well, he did very, very well. And even outside of that, we had many, many more folks receive five-figure airdrops. So huge amounts of Move distributed to our core community, as well as to our developers and to our builders. And so in the time between the TGE and then the mainnet, I mean, for example, we ran our cornucopia program in which we had over $250 million, that's over $250 million deposited into the network and into the protocols that will be launching on top of us as well.
So this is an expanded question for the Move tokens. So what kind of utilities are there for the Move tokens or expanded use cases planned for the Move token? And how do you see this role evolving with the ecosystem maybe?
Yeah, so the way that I see the movement network and the network's token positioned is that it represents the Move language. So what we've seen recently, right, we've seen governments take bets on the Move language and some even take bets and purchase the Move token. I think that this is taking a bet on the future. It's investing in the Move language as a whole because we are the ones who are doing the most for the go-to-market and the adoption of Move as a language. So the token itself, it's going to be very similar to any other network token like an ETH or like a Solana or even like a Celestia, for example, where it's going to be used for gas. It's going to be a medium of exchange for the network. It will be used for staking and validating. An area that I think we're going to see some novel utility from is not just for Move stakers, but for the people who are using Move on chain, whether you're putting it into borrow lend or putting it into liquidity pools or all of the other various ways that you can use your token, we're expecting that applications in the network are going to have access to that data and be able to make informed decisions about how they do airdrops to their users. So for example, in the past, a lot of folks have airdropped to stakers. Celestia is a really good example of that, where if you stake TIA, then you're receiving a number of airdrops. I think that staking is good, it's beneficial, but you don't necessarily know if you're airdropping to a bot or a Cybele wallet. You don't have much data. But if you're able to see the utilization of Move in a much deeper way, for example, what percent of the wallet is being staked, or is the wallet engaging in other DeFi activities? Is this an active trader? That sort of information is how we were able to have such a successful airdrop when our network launched. And so we're going to be collecting even more of this information with the rollout of our Parthenon V2 program, and then passing this information onto the applications so that they will have a full scope, holistic picture of how the token holder operates, such that for people who are net positive users and contributing to the ecosystem, apps, I believe, will concentrate their airdrops to those users. Whereas for users who are receiving airdrops and not doing anything with them, or even worse, if they're dumping their airdrops, apps are going to know to not airdrop to these users so that they're able to give more rewards to the highly engaged folks and ultimately create better health for the project as well. So that's the area that I'm really excited around the Move token, is that apps will see the data and they will be able to make smart decisions for how they airdrop that ultimately are going to benefit the real users and the real participants of the network.
네, 혹시 이런 무브먼트 토큰 및 이런 무브먼트 토크노믹스, 그리고 방금 쿠퍼가 언급했듯이 이제 실제 사용자들에게 에어드랍을 해주는 형식에 대해서 뭐 또 따로 질문이 있으신지 아니면 네.
일단 말씀해 주셨던 방식은 이제
네.
멘틀 레이어 2에서
네.
지금 현재도 많이 진행되고 있는 방식이고, 사람들한테 꽤나 투자자들한테 꽤나 이제 인기 있는 상품으로 알고 있고, 이런 구조를 무브먼트가 적용한다는 것 자체는 좋은 일이라고 좀 생각이 좀 들어요. 근데 제가 이제 좀 더 궁금했던 거는, 기존의 무브먼트가 시작했을 때 당시만 해도 M1, M2라고 해서 레이어 2, 그러니까 앱토스의 뭔가 레이어 2를 포지셔닝 했는데, 갑자기 이제 레이어 1으로 다시 사업을 확장한다고 해서 단독적인 네트워크로 좀 탈바꿈한 것 같거든요. 그래서 이런 것에 대한 어떤 이유가 있는지도 좀 궁금하고, 이것에 따른 뭐 토크노믹스에 대한 어떤 변경, 이런 것들이 뭐 있을 건지, 뭐 예를 들어서 뭐 밸리데이터들도 온보딩을 시켜야 되고, 그럼 더 많은 토큰을 또 델리게이션 해줘야 되니까, 뭐 이런 것들에 대한 인플레이션이 또 시장에 흘러나올 수도 있고, 뭐 이런 것들에 대한 어떤 좀 이야기를 좀 듣고 싶습니다.
So I think the case that you were mentioning is now occurring on the mental layer 2 also. So I think it will be a very good idea using those real use cases and giving airdrops or something. But one question that he has is that when you started Movement, there was M1 and M2 thing, and so it was kind of an Aptos layer 2. You started as Aptos layer 2, but why did you move to a layer 1 to build as a layer 1? And are there any tokenomics changes according to your change as a L2 to a L1? And after that, since you changed from L2 to L1, there would be more token. Will there be more token inflations? Like there will be some token allocations for onboarding validators or something, maybe?
Yeah, thanks for the question. You're a real OG if you remember M1 and M2. So with respect to becoming an L1, the Movement network as it stands right now is a layer 2 on top of Ethereum. We are scoping building out a layer 1 chain. And so with respect to that, we're in very early stages of scoping this out, determining if this is the direction we want to take. So it is a bit too early to tell how tokenomics might change, if they will change at all. But as part of this plan, we do want to roll out a decentralized sequencer. So with that, we would be expanding the validator network, allowing our community and our builders and ecosystem to be able to take part in the validation process. And of course, having incentives and rewards for them. But all of this is still very early stages.
Okay, thank you. Wait, there was some inquiries from my side, so I'll just check one thing.
For sure.
So after you launch your mainnet successfully, so I think onboarding a lot of the apps and expanding your ecosystem will be very important. So after your mainnet launch, which sectors like DeFi, NFTs, gaming, AI will you focus on first to grow your maybe DApp ecosystem? Because there are some layer ones which are focusing on special parts.
For sure. I think the best thing to do as an early stage chain is to build out a DeFi ecosystem. I think that is the foundational building block for any network. And with that, we'll be onboarding all of the cornucopia, quarter billion TVL into those applications. We will be turning on Move incentives for users to engage with these applications and ultimately create a lot of volume, create a lot of users active and trading occurring on the chain. As a next phase, we're then very excited to see NFTs blossoming and meme coins rolling out. We have lots of existing NFT and meme coin collections already that have built really good communities, even distributing the allow list for participation in the project. So for these guys to start launching their projects as well, I think will create a lot of vibrancy. And then from there, looking at things like games and consumer applications, because I believe, one of the biggest, the realest, and most active communities all across Web3. And so for any game or a consumer application, this is going to be the best place to build if you want to onboard these real and very highly engaged users, as well as get to benefit from the performance of the Move smart contracts.
네, 방금 그 쿠퍼님이 이제 디파이 생태계를 먼저 초점을 맞춘 다음에 그 뒤로 넘어가고 싶다고 말씀을 주셨는데 이제 아무래도 디파이 쪽 전문가시다 보니까 이제 이런 뭐 어떤 식으로 이제 발전을 하면 좋을 것 같은지 아니면은 이런 의견도 물어보고 싶고 또 추가적인 또 질문도 있으시다면 주셔도 좋겠습니다.
일단 뭐 그 레이어 1들에서 가장 명확한 유즈 케이스가 사실 디파이이기 때문에 디파이는 꼭 모든 체인들의 코어 어떤 기능으로 가져가야 될 좀 것 같아요. 그래서 뭐 디파이에 대한 어떤 기대감도 너무 되고 제가 저번 달에 이제 런던에 출장을 갔을 때 거기에 있는 헤지펀드 이제 그 헤지펀드 출신의 사람들이 토큰화를 하기 위해서 어떤 체인을 쓸 거냐라고 이제 좀 물어봤을 때 그들이 무브먼트를 좀 고려하고 있다라고 얘기를 하더라고요. 그래서 이제 저는 오히려 좀 궁금한 거가 무브먼트가 RWA, 특히 한국에서 이 관심 많은 RWA에서 어떤 계획이 있는지도 사실 좀 궁금하고 이런 정보가 한국의 유저들한테도 큰 도움이 될 것 같아요.
So what he was saying is that I think a lot of layer 1 chains are building DeFi because it's the core use case of most layer 1s. And he went to a business trip to London last month, and he went to a hedge fund, and they were thinking about a lot of tokenization of RWA maybe. And what they said is that when he asked them, what kind of chain are you going to use for the tokenization? They said that they were going to use Movement. So why did you think they said Movement to use as their tokenization layer 1? And in the Korean market, a lot of people are interested in RWA, such as Ondo Finance and a lot of protocols. So what kind of plans are you having in the RWA sector maybe?
Yeah, thank you. And that's really cool to hear. So I think that there's three main reasons that institutions are coming to Movement for real world assets. One being the Move language itself. Second being our community and validation from other institutions. And then third being the role that we're playing in the regulatory and government and political space. So from the Move language side, Facebook created the Move language specifically to onboard institutional finance onto blockchain. They don't believe they don't believe solidity is secure enough. It's very difficult to read and to understand. You cannot justify to your LPs the huge risk of smart contract hack. So Move, on the other hand, it's safer, it's faster, purpose-built for real-world assets. The second reason being that we have a massive global community. So the movement in our community is biggest in emerging markets. I think that some of the most important markets right now that people are paying attention to, places like South Korea, places like Turkey, like Nigeria and Vietnam. In each of these locations, particularly in areas like Turkey and Nigeria, folks are interested in getting access to the US dollar. And I think this has oftentimes brought people to cryptocurrency. Bitcoin is an amazing hedge against inflation, especially for some of these local currencies. And so with that, where these institutional players, they of course want to onboard they want to grow their user base and onboard these markets, we are able to be that pipeline to connect them. We additionally are doing a lot in the institutional space. There's going to be a lot of big announcements coming out very shortly of massive firms that we're partnering with and that are going to be building their products on our chain. And so with that, we already have an ecosystem of real world assets and institutions. So if you come build on Movement, you're not all alone. All of your friends are there already waiting for you. We will also have a very large, robust, and very liquid DeFi liquidity. So it's not just that you can bring real world assets on chain, but you can actually borrow against them and go degen in DeFi with those real world assets that you already have. And then the last point being that we've seen massive support, for example, from the US government for the Move language, for the Movement network, and the Move token. We have a lot of great connections in that space and are doing a lot of things there. Additionally, my co-founder Rushi, he's an advisor to the Thai government for stablecoins and this future of finance. So overwhelmingly, governments are betting not only on the Move language, but on Movement itself as well. So our plan to wrap up and to answer your question, sorry for the long context regarding that. My vision is that we are able to onboard the US financial behemoth onto the blockchain, that we are able to democratize access to these core products. For example, there's many that you have to be an ultra high net worth individual to get access to. We believe that anyone around the world should have access to that, even if whether you're American or whether you're wherever you are in the world, you deserve access to high quality financial products. And we then want to onboard every emerging market and everywhere that we can into these financial products. We believe that this can be, alongside the Move language, it's a revitalization and globalization of the American dream. We can extend that to everyone.
So, as you mentioned, there are a lot of regulations in the US market and also the Korean market, maybe. So, with the heightened regulations in the US and Korea, how is Movement preparing to navigate these challenges? And what strategies do you have in place to mitigate regulatory risks, maybe?
Yeah, I think that the regulatory outlook is so much brighter today than it was even 6 months ago. So at least what we're seeing in the United States is a massive appetite for supporting American founders and American crypto. And so we've seen a lot of that support, for example, from the purchasing of the Move token from the World Liberty and Finance Project. And so with respect to that, we believe that there will be a big push within the US government to create a path for US teams to bring their companies onshore and into the United States, which we're very keen to do. I think that it will enable the good actors to have more alignment with the broader US market and with the government. And for any bad actors, it's like if you're going to remain offshore as a US team, that kind of speaks volumes about your intentions and hopefully can be a signal to the market. So we fully intend and we want to not only comply with all of the regulations and everything going on there, but be an active participant in those conversations to do what's best for the industry. Because I think that ultimately this sort of validation from governments, it's a good thing. And I think that teams that play ball are going to be the ones that will have the best longevity and be able to ultimately create the solutions that we want to see of onboarding the next million, the next billion users onto the blockchain. You're not going to do that by being hostile towards any government, but rather by aligning with them, I believe.
Okay, so I'll do one more question and then ask Professor Joe's opinion or questions. So about you are just mentioning about the World Liberty Finance movement token purchases. So I have a question related to this from the community. So they have seen a lot of news about World Liberty Finance consistently purchasing Move tokens. So can you share any insights into why do you think they are drawn to movement and what this might mean for the project's future, as you mentioned in the regulatory sector also?
For sure. Yeah, what I personally believe is that it's a reflection of confidence, one, in Move as a language, and secondly, in movement as a very proudly American team that is a good actor in the Web3 space, that is creating technical innovation and bringing that innovation to market, and ultimately pursuing the goals, the broader goals of the US as a nation. For example, what I mentioned of onboarding every emerging market into US financial products, well, that's massive for the strength of the US dollar globally. And in many cases, like Vietnam, for example, the US is competing with peer nations for who is going to be the core partner of Vietnam and many other nations around the world. And so it really preserves the sanctity and the strength of the US dollar for us to be doing what we are doing. And so, yeah, I think that this confidence is reflected in purchases of the token, and then all of the other amazing things that we're cooking from the political and government front.
So I'll do a question for Professor Joe and ask him about his insight. So maybe I can take my time for a bit and then ask him. Okay, sorry. 네, 그래서 현재 무브먼트가 이제 맨 처음에는 디파이 쪽에 집중을 하고 이제 이런 규제 관련해서도 많은 노력을 하고 있는 것으로 보이는데요. 혹시 조 선생님이 이제 기존에도 이제 전통금융 쪽에 계시다가 이쪽으로 넘어오셨는데 이런 무브먼트의 행보에 대해서 어떻게 생각하시는지, 그리고 또 추가적인 질문이 있으신다면 해주시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 네.
네, 저는 개인적으로 무브먼트는 이번 상승장에서 가장 흔히 말하는 웹3 디젠들이 좋아할 만한 약간 토큰 전략을 잘 짠 프로젝트 같아요. 메인넷 출시 전에 이제 토큰을 출시하고 적은 유통력을 활용해서 더 큰 밸류에이션으로 이제 어떻게 사람들의 관심을 끌고, 그 다음에 기관 투자자들한테는 뭐 여러 가지 어떤 그 장외 거래를 통해서 이렇게 토큰을 계속 이렇게 중앙화해서 탈중앙화로 시키는 그런 것들이 굉장히 인상적인 전략이었던 것 같고요. 제가 좀 궁금한 거는 이제 기존에 이제 무브 언어를 사용하는 뭐 앱토스나 수이 같은 이코시스템하고 뭐 어떻게 같이 협업을 해 나갈 건지, 아니면 그들을 이제 경쟁사로 이제 생각을 해서 견제를 할 건지 이런 어떤 포지셔닝에 대한 좀 내용도 좀 궁금합니다.
Professor Joe just said that Movement was the best project to play on this bear market for maybe the TGE and the mainnet launch, because you did TGE before mainnet and you were kind of on low FDV, high float, those kind of strategies. And so I think a lot of degens on the Twitter space and the maybe Korean Telegram space and the communities are liking Movement a lot. So the question is, there are a lot of layer ones using the Move language, such as Aptos, Sui, and also Movement too. So how are you going to work or compete with these layer ones? Are you going to cooperate with them a lot, or are you going to compete with them a lot? He's curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, firstly, thank you. It means a lot, the recognition of the way that we came to market, because I really believe that this is a 5-year, this is a 10-year project. Simply put, Move is a brand new language. It's so early that now is right. The pie is so small, and what we should be focused on is growing the pie and doing things on a long-term time horizon, because anything short-term, right, it just doesn't make sense with the state of the Move language, because it's going to be so much bigger in the coming years. So that's how we think of collaborating with Aptos and Sui. Even though that on paper, you might think that we're a competitor, in practice, the Move market share is so small that we'd be fighting over table scraps. It makes a lot more sense to grow the pie together for the adoption of the Move language, where that's a rising tide which lifts all ships. Ultimately, in 5 years, all three of us should be in a much better position than we are right now. And that doesn't have to come at the cost of one another. It comes at actually the benefit of every single user whose funds are now safe in Move contracts and they can rest easy, and all of the developers and all of the community that are able to be a part of something so early in terms of the broader roadmap for Move market share. So that's kind of where our approach ties in. I kind of see ourselves as, it's like a diplomatic envoy to Ethereum, where we're, instead of asking them to come to us, we're coming directly to them, and we're proselytizing, we're preaching about the benefits of Move and distributing these incentives and this goodwill to as many people as we can, and yeah, growing the pie as Ethereum aligned as possible. Because I think that that's ultimately where the next generation of Move developers and Move users are going to come from. They're going to come from Ethereum aligned networks, because for the first time, you're able to experience these next generation benefits without having to leave Ethereum.
So as far as the AMA continues, so I think Movement is doing a very good after the mainnet launch and everything before mainnet, and all the things with Ethereum alignment and about the Move language and about America, government, and regulation, all the stuff. But even though projects are doing very well on themselves, I think it should be aligned with the market. So we've seen a lot of altcoins underperforming while Bitcoin dominance is rising these days, and the market is very bad these days. So how do you assess the current market trends, and what impact might these have on Movement's roadmap after your mainnet launch?
Yeah, you're right. The altcoin market has been terrible lately. It blows my mind, because when you look at the price of Bitcoin and it's above 90K, imagine if this was 2021 and what you would expect the price of all of the altcoins to be if Bitcoin was at 90K. And we've got the highest Bitcoin ever, and alts are, it's not even like treading water. Many of them, if not all of them, are actively going down, which is not, I mean, I don't know if shocking is the right word. It's very interesting. I think that the reason for Bitcoin's dominance and this breaking away is that recently we've seen massive institutions coming into Bitcoin. They're buying hundreds of millions of dollars worth of Bitcoin. But BlackRock, right, they're not buying altcoins, not right now. And so I think that's the reason for decoupling, that globally, right, we're still in a not great market. I think there was a lot of excitement in around December and then early January of Trump taking office, a lot of these news of regulatory promises being made and the roadmap that people were expecting for the markets. And overall, people were incredibly excited. There was a lot of fervor. I think that's the best word for it. And eventually, right, that cools off. People realize that regulatory roadmaps, that's going to take a lot of time. People realize that market conditions, they're not going to suddenly improve overnight. That's also going to take a lot of time. And it's going to be a long process to get to the right point. And so they're becoming more aware of the economic realities of things like inflation, that ultimately, right, we're not in the market that we all are waiting for and excited for. It might be coming, but it's not here yet. And so I think that that's why we've seen such a large pullback from the markets in general. But I think that what this can point to, so what we saw with Bitcoin is the kind of price action, and it's crazy to think of an asset that has as large of a market cap as Bitcoin having the absolute run that it recently had. The sheer amount of capital needed to push the needle for an asset as large as Bitcoin, it's monumental. And so I think that for the next cycle that we'll see is institutions starting to work more with altcoins, right? A lot of folks have chatted about things like Ethereum, like Solana. I think now folks are chatting about Move, and they're talking about movement. And as you mentioned, we're seeing a lot of institutions coming and building their products there. And ultimately, I think that we're going to see the Facebook Libra vision of bringing these major institutions on chain fulfilled. And I think that it's going to be through the Move language. So that's why I'm thinking of things on a 5-year and 10-year time horizon, because these major players, they move slow. They don't move very fast. However, if you give it enough time, then I think what we saw with Bitcoin is going to be repeated with the key leading technological and go-to-market players within Web3.
So thank you for your market view, and I can ask Professor Joe about his market view and about his thoughts also.
Yeah.
그래서 이제 쿠퍼의 이제 시장 전망에 대해서도 들어봤는데요. 이제 아무래도 조 선생님이 이런 쪽의 전문가시다 보니까 아무래도 조 선생님의 시장 전망 또한 들어보고 싶고, 또한 이런 무브먼트가 어떤 식으로 이제 이런 무브먼트 같은 토큰들이 어떤 식으로 이런 장을 이겨내 가야 할지 생각하시는 점을 말씀해 주시면 좋을 것 같습니다.
뭐 현재 시장 자체는 알트코인 시장 자체는 굉장히 안 좋다 생각을 하고, 기존과 다른 점은 다들 아시다시피 리테일들의 어떤 매수세가 예전보다 이제 강하지 않다. 그리고 뭐 기관 언급을 주셨지만 뭐 기관 투자자들도 ETF나 ETP를 통해서 뭐 비트코인이나 뭐 이더리움 같은 자산에는 익스포저를 하지만 뭐 다른 알트코인에 대해서는 아직은 적극적인 행보를 보이지 않기 때문에 시장에 좀 유동성이 좀 부족한 느낌이 좀 많이 들고, 그러다 보니까 디젠 플레이어들만 서로 이제 파일을 뺏고 뺏는 그런 그림이 나오는 것 같아요. 일단 그렇고, 네, 무브먼트 같은 경우는 신생 어떻게 보면 출시된 이제 토큰이기도 하고, 아직 이제 굉장히 많은 스트레스 테스트를 이제 거쳐야 될 것 같아요. 마켓 사이클에 따라서 이제 하락할 때도 한번 좀 경험을 해보고, 또 상승할 때도 한번 경험을 해보고, 이런 것들이 조금 몇 사이클 돌아야지 무브먼트에 좀 진가가 나올 것 같은데, 무브먼트가 가야 될 이제 방향성은 수위랑 비슷하다고 생각을 해요. 수위 같은 경우가 이번 상승장에 굉장히 큰 퍼포먼스를 낼 수 있었던 거는 결국 재단에서 적극적으로 수익 토큰을 이제 시장에서 매집을 해주고 심지어 뭐 FTX가 갖고 있었던 알로케이션을 전부 다 이제 인수를 했었잖아요. 그렇기 때문에 사실 수위가 올라갈 수 있는, 그러니까 매도세는 없어지고 매수세는 이제 자체적으로 재단이 만들어서 계속적으로 이제 가격을 올릴 수 있는 그런 어떤 플레이를 했었었는데, 그런 것들이 좀 많이 필요하지 않나. 더 나아가서 뭐 솔라나처럼 자신들의 어떤 그 그룹 내에서 뭐 자체적인 어떤 프로젝트들을 계속적으로 좀 빌딩해서, 예를 들어서 카미노도 그렇고 주피터도 그렇고 뭐 지토도 그렇듯이 뭔가 그 체인에 대표되는 어떤 디파이들이 좀 많이 나오면은 사람들이 더 좋아하지 않을까, 이런 생각을 좀 들었습니다.
So his view was that these days the altcoin market is very bad, and retail has a very low buying pressure these days. They only sell, and also for the institutions, they have only exposures to the Bitcoin and Ethereum because there's only Bitcoin and Ethereum ETF. So I think the market is not very good these days, and all of the crypto degens are taking their each pie in a very small market. So I think there's a very not much buying pressure these days. So movement should go for a lot of market cycles, like 5 years, 10 years, as you mentioned, just like what Solana did after the FTX crash, maybe. So what he said is that movement should work like Sui, maybe, because for the Sui, the foundation bought a lot of tokens, bought all of the tokens after the FTX crash, and they are building a lot of things for their ecosystem, a lot of hackathons, and so they made more buying pressure for Sui tokens and less selling pressure for the Sui tokens. And I think what he said is a movement should incubate more projects in their ecosystem, such as Solana did for like Camino and Jupiter and Jito.
Yeah, that's very smart. We were inspired by the Hacker House model in what I'm doing in Asia right now. We're establishing regional hubs in each of these cities where we have many developers, builders, KOLs, investors, traders, degens, community, market, so many awesome people. And I believe that by bringing them all together, that we can put the puzzle pieces together in a way that benefits everyone that's involved, and ultimately will lead to a much stronger incubation program and lead to stronger go-to-markets for each of the applications that is building on us. We're on that long-term cycle. We can keep investing in the real world and in our community and ecosystem, and grow strong.
Yeah, I think movement is growing very strong, and also in the Korean market, because movement's trading volume is about 30% is coming from the Korean market nowadays, and most of these questions are made from the movement community in Korea. So are there any plans to collaborate with like other move-based projects like Aptos or Sui? I'm sorry, I'll do it again. So maybe can I do it again? The last question. Yeah. So I think you guys are doing very good nowadays. Like about 30% of the trading volume is coming from the Korean market, and almost all of these questions are made from your Korean community. So, do you have any strategies for growing more for the Korean community, especially after your mainland launch?
Yeah, I've been so proud of the Korean community, how folks such as Bookie Road have stepped up. He's an absolutely amazing person. I got to meet him in person in Seoul for KBW. We were the title sponsors. We plan to have a very large presence again next year. And with that, we held events. We got everyone chicken and beer, for example, and we had Korean fried chicken, my favorite food ever. And yeah, we got to bring people together. Bookie Road has been holding in-person meetups for some time now and building the community in amazing ways. We're also chatting with incredible folks and incredible builders within Korea, such as like Eric at the Guild. There's Scott with the Lunch team. We also are super close with this rock star named Wani, who's huge KOL and pushing out a lot of incredible content and analysis and growing communities and marketing within Korea. And of course, working as much as we can with Korean team, even not just like the DeFi or like the ecosystem teams, but folks like the Fact Block team, like media teams and companies. So really trying to invest in Korean infrastructure, Korean builders, Korean community marketers as much as we can, because like you said, Korea is a key market for crypto as a whole. And I think there's so much opportunity within there. And yeah, generally we'll take every chance that we can get to keep investing in our talent and our top performers. And honestly, it means a lot that you think that we're doing so well in Korea, because all we're thinking about right now is how can we do better? How can we keep doing more? I can't wait to come to Seoul. I believe it's for Build Week, the 11th to 14th of April. So I'd love to meet up with you guys in person, get some chicken and beer. We'll probably hold another event as well there for all of our community and just all of these amazing folks to come together and establish our Seoul regional hub.
So thank you for coming here, and thank you for talking a lot about movement. And the last question will be, we have a signature question that we ask everyone. So is there a question you want to answer maybe?
Honestly, these have all been amazing questions from the community, and also that's a really nice signature question as well. I think that we were able to hit all of the key things in the questions that you asked already. However,
Okay, thank you. Then I'll do the final ment, and maybe we can wrap up this AMA.
for sure.
네, 그래서 오늘은 디파이 농부 조 선생님과 함께 무브먼트 AMA를 진행해봤습니다. 이렇게 커뮤니티, 무브먼트 한국 커뮤니티에서 준비해주신 좋은 질문들과 이제 저희의 인사이트를 아주 약간 담아서 AMA를 진행해봤는데 어떠셨나요?
흥미로웠습니다. 이런 포맷은 또 처음이라.
그런가요? 네, 저희도 너무 즐거웠고, it was very great to meet you, Cooper. Say hello and maybe bye to your Korean communities one more time.
Yeah, 안녕하세요, G-Move. 감사합니다 for coming, for listening in. I think there's a lot of alpha, a lot of things dropped here. Really appreciate Block Media team. Thank you, Ethan. Thank you, Professor Joe, as well, for these amazing questions. And thank you to all of the community for these amazing, really engaging, really insightful questions. And I can't wait to see you all in Seoul. So thank you.
네, 앞으로도 무브먼트의 메인넷 출시 이후의 행보 계속 기대해 주시면 좋을 것 같습니다. 시청해 주셔서 감사합니다. G-Move.
G-Move.